Okay, so the title of this quick presentation is Specifying a Purpose for Research. So I want to just quickly show or recap as we're thinking about this idea of research process cycle by showing a quick little graphic here of the cycle. And so again, we always are going to start with identifying a research problem, which you've also been learning about in the module this week. So how to really think about not just a topic that's very broad, but an actual research problem or an issue about that topic that you want to specify, that you're going to justify, and that you're going to make it clear why it's important or what needs to be studied about or relative to this particular issue or research problem. You also, in the next step, as it shows on this, is really about reviewing the literature. And again, you see an arrow here to say that, as you jump into the literature, as you continue to review literature on a particular topic or problem area, it may help influence how you revise or think about that problem, and also how you've specified that problem and the things that you're specific to about that problem or issue help guide you in terms of the type of literature that you're searching. But this is not a process that is stagnant and just goes in one direction. Sometimes you may go back and forth to different parts of this cycle. And then once you've specified the problem, you've been reviewing the literature, which hopefully all of you are beginning to do, and that's informing your work. You have to specify a purpose for your research. So you've established the problem. You're in the literature, you're helping support that problem, you're using that as a guide to help refine. But really the important next step in terms of building the foundation for your research is going to be identifying a purpose statement. So what am I actually planning to do in my study to address this particular research problem or issue? And specifically moving into that purpose statement being guided into specific and measurable research questions that you can answer as part of your study. And so in this particular brief presentation, I'm going to be just focusing mostly on identifying a purpose statement. So again, just a quick recap when we're thinking about the statement of the problem, or sometimes we call in more applied work the problem of practice. There's kind of three important things we want to be thinking about. We really want to state the problem of practice or the concern or the issue. So if we're going to think about developing maybe like a one-paragraph statement of our problem, we want to start off by just stating what is the problem of practice, what's the concern, what's the issue. Again, this is going beyond just like a topic area of, I'm interested in studying, depression for college students, which is really more of a topic, not a problem. So you may say, the problem is that there's been an increase in depression among college students, which is resulting in maybe poor academic performance, poor social relationships, etc. That would be the difference between just the topic of depression or anxiety in college students and a specific problem. The problem is that increase in that diagnoses and the ramifications of that. So you're going to state that. Then you're going to obviously provide justification. You can't just make a statement based on your opinion. You actually have to have some type of either data or research to suggest, in this case, that there has been an increase in depression, anxiety, maybe in college students, or there has been a rise in this and it's or poor academic performance, poor social relationships. So you have to really justify, hey, I'm not just telling you this is an issue, but I'm giving you some data and some research to show, yes, this is actually an issue. And then you really also want to what we call highlight deficiency. So this is where we're really saying, what do we know or what don't we know about this particular issue? And this is really important because if we have a topic that we're studying and we already know most of what we can know about it, which that's very few and far between that we ever have topics that really fall under that. But if it's really been well researched and we really know a lot about it, then it's probably not necessarily what you should be looking at. Maybe there's some other aspect of it that you want to look at, but you need to highlight. So maybe in this case, the hypothetical I've been using, maybe there's been a lot of studies that have looked at it from maybe the college student's perspective, but there haven't been any studies. Maybe you're interested in actually looking at how student life or professors on a campus, what are their perceptions about this issue and things that can be done. And so maybe you're saying, hey, we need to better understand that aspect. And so your study is going to, address from that perspective. So again, the statement of the problem is going to be quickly stating what the concern, issue, or problem of practice, providing some justification. This isn't a full lit review, just a quick justification, and then highlighting deficiencies and making it clear like, hey, this needs to be studied. And so again, we're going to move to quickly talking about once you've identified the problem, and again, you're gathering more research, you're diving into the research, that you've got to specify a purpose. So I might have using the example I just gave, I may be able to have a really good statement of the problem related to this issue of depression, anxiety in college students. But what am I actually intending to do? What's the purpose of my study? What am I specifically trying to do? And from that, then we're also going to develop research questions that can be answered. So a statement of the purpose or the purpose of research is generally a one sentence, so sometimes it can be multiple sentences that represents really indicating for the reader what the direction of the research is. Sometimes you'll see it as you read articles. You may not see them explicitly state the purpose. They might say something like the aims of the study or the reason the study is being conducted is to do. And so really the purpose statement is to be a quick, after you've stated the problem, a 1 to 2 sentence statement that articulates what it is, the aim or the goal of your intended study. I'm going to show a few examples in a minute, but really one of the very first steps in developing a good purpose statement and then ultimately research questions is identifying and specifying variables. Now, next week in the module, there'll be in-depth coverage of of variables and aspects of that. But just as a quick overview, as you can see from this little figure here, that a variable is really just some type of characteristic or an attribute or something that can be measured, and it varies among the individuals. So in a sample that you're going to take, and again, we haven't talked about samples yet, it has to be something that can be measured, and it's going to be variable. People are going to have different scores, different ratings, different rankings on this particular measure. So for example, I'll show some examples on the next slide, but one thing to think about, so let's say I was interested in studying these college students, again in the hypothetical that I was choosing, college students would not be a variable because it doesn't vary in this study. All of the people that I'm going to be looking at are college students. Now maybe there's something about the college students, maybe I want to look at things like, do these characteristics vary by whether they're freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? In that case, the variable would be class ranking because I can measure it. They're either a freshman, they're a sophomore, they're a junior, they're a senior, and it varies obviously from one person to the next. One person's a freshman, one person's a sophomore. Maybe I want to look at this among gender of college students. Well, gender in this case could potentially be a variable because it can be measured and it varies. There's males and there's females. So again, it's important to think about a variable as something that can be measured, an attribute, a characteristic, and it varies. So if you think about gathering all the information, it's going to have variable responses or data for that variable. Here's some just kind of quick examples. Demographics can be variables sometimes. Sometimes it's just your sample. Obviously, you have certain demographics in your sample, but sometimes you're actually interested in demographics themselves as a variable. You may be interested in certain types of instruction or intervention or counseling strategies or therapies or something as a variable. Maybe you're interested in how somebody rates the quality of instruction. Maybe you're interested in perceptions, either from a teacher or a clinician, given whatever your topic is. So somebody's perceptions can be a variable. Scores on norm referenced assessments can be a variable. Attendance, remaining in college can be a variable. All of these are all examples of things that can be a variable because they can be measured, and across the sample that you measure, there's going to be different scores, quote unquote, ratings, values for these particular variables. And it's really important, why am I talking about variables even though we're not covering them until next week, is it's really important that your purpose statement clearly identifies the variables of interest in your study for the reader. So when I write a purpose statement, again, I'm going to write one, maybe two sentences, and generally it's going to say the purpose of this study is to, and then we're going to focus on using keywords to help the reader understand what we're trying to do. And so we'll get in further in the class into the different types of research, but essentially there's descriptive research, which is really trying to describe or characterize. There's correlational research, which is examining relationships between different variables or trying to predict one variable from another, or the correlation between two variables. And there's experimental studies in which you're really trying, or quasi-experimental studies in which you're trying to compare between groups. You're trying to look at the effect of something or the impact. And so your purpose statement needs to clearly identify what you're trying to do. Are you trying to describe? Are you trying to examine relationships? Are you trying to compare? And so we want to make sure we have that. And then also the participants or the sample need to be really reflected in a purpose statement. A couple examples, you can even pause and take a look at these real quick. But you can see these are all examples of, and these are actually all real examples. These are all examples of students that I have had in chairing dissertations. These are all actual purpose statements. What you will notice in each one of them, this top one, you notice it uses the word differences. So I know this is going to compare groups. The middle one talks about relationships. So we know that's going to be a correlational. The one on the bottom talks about describing. So each one of these is a different design. You also notice in each one of them, the who is described. In this one, middle school students with reading disabilities. In this one, high school students. In this one, special education teachers. And then in terms of variables, in this one, you can see the variables are both interventions and STAR reading scores. In this one, we have variables of number sense knowledge and interest in math. In this bottom one, we have teachers' perceptions of preparedness to address transition outcomes. So each one of these clearly in one sentence clearly articulates the purpose in terms of the what are we trying to study, what are the variables, the who is my focus, and the how. I'm going to describe, I'm going to look at relationships, or I'm going to compare groups. And then in my last slide, I just want to kind of quickly highlight that from our purpose statement, we use that to develop our research questions. And there's other materials in this module that focuses on research questions, but one of the most important things you can think about is that the research question should have those same elements as with the purpose statement: the who, the what, and the how. And in many respects, it can just mirror the purpose statement. So I'm going to jump back up here for a second. So for this first one, you could turn this into a research question by saying, what are the differences on STAR reading outcomes between two currently used reading intervention curriculum for middle school students with reading disabilities? Or this next one is, what is the relationship between number sense knowledge and interest, and so forth? Or this bottom one is, what are special education teachers' perceptions? So you can see there I've used the same language. I've just simply turned my purpose into an actual question. So that really makes it much more simplistic for you, for the reader, that the purpose is clearly articulated, what you hope to do, what you're aiming to do in the study. And then by turning it into a question, you actually now have quantifiable questions that can be answered in writing a research question. And so that is really, at this point, the step where you're at is progressing from your problem statement to your purpose statement, and then ultimately to your research questions. And then from there, you will learn more specifically about variables and sampling and research methods.